Are you wondering how you can build a commercial real estate business from scratch? Or maybe you're already in the commercial real estate space and are looking for lessons and inspiration from somebody who has had success building their business in the trenches. Today, you'll be hearing from my brother, David Newman, about his 20-year journey in commercial real estate. And what makes his story so powerful is that he started knowing absolutely nothing. No background, no connections, just curiosity and a willingness to figure it out as he went. I want to share his story here because this channel is all about showing you what's possible in real estate. And you just have to start from where you are. As my older brother, he's somebody who I've watched firsthand put in the work and slowly build something solid in an industry that can feel really intimidating from the outside. David's path is proof that you don't have to have it all figured out on day one in order to build something meaningful over time. As you watch, pay attention to how he handled the moments where things didn't go as planned and the habits and mindset that helped him stay in the game for over 2 decades. My hope is that his journey gives you practical ideas, encouragement, and the confidence to take your own next step, whether that's in commercial real estate or any other path that you're considering. And by the way, I'm Sarah Newman, a top 3% residential real estate agent here in Charleston, South Carolina, and founder of the Elevate team with eXp Realty. I help agents grow businesses that are strategic, branded, and built to last without burning out in the process. If you want to connect with myself or David, our contact information and calendar links are in the description below. Without further ado, let's get into David and his story.
20 years ago, I walked away from a corporate finance job where I was miserable. My first real estate lease, I nearly screwed it up. But fast forward 20 years later, and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of transactions to include a minor league baseball stadium, a 1 million square foot Class A corporate office development, and numerous transactions on the commercial side across state lines, I'm here to share with you my journey and some of the things that I wish I'd known about commercial real estate from day one. Hi, I'm David Newman, and I'm a Senior Vice President with eXp Commercial. I was 14 years old when my parents opened up their first restaurant called Glory Days Grill in Northern Virginia, along with 2 other families. Eventually, that restaurant chain grew from 1 unit to over 40 operating units, Maryland all the way down to Florida. What I got to learn through my father and my parents was almost through osmosis. I can remember multiple car rides where my dad would be talking to brokers, attorneys, real estate developers about the restaurants. So I got to learn firsthand commercial real estate through my parents. After college, I got a stable job working for a defense contractor. I was working in the finance and cost accounting department, sending invoices and reconciling accounts. I did the same thing month after month. I was good at my job, probably a little too good at it. About 3 months in, I remember being done with my workload for the entire month within the first couple of weeks and having a specific conversation with some folks around the coffee machine about, hey, can you slow down a little bit? You're making us look bad. I was working too fast. Well, that didn't exactly fit my personality. I had a wake-up call. I started looking at my boss who had been there for 5 years and my boss's boss who had been there for 10 and even my boss's boss who had been there for 20, and I certainly didn't want to be like any of them. So that was my moment. I made a decision. I was going to finish my next 18 months working for the defense contractor. Simultaneously, I was going to work nights and weekends at the restaurants to save up money. At that point, I booked a one-way ticket to Athens, Greece, along with 3 of my best friends from college. I'd saved up enough money where we could travel for 3 months with just a backpack. There was no iPhone, there was no computer. It was just us with our packs and a Eurail pass. It was a great adventure. When I came back, I remember a very tough conversation with my father. Something along the lines of, I think it's tremendous that you went out and traveled the world. That's fantastic. My dad never had an opportunity like that. But now that we're back, what is it that we're going to do with your future? What is it that you'd like to do with your career and the rest of your life? So after that tough conversation, I remember he introduced me to somebody, and that one conversation changed my career forever. My dad introduced me to a man by the name of Jay Donegan. And there was something about the way my dad talked about Jay that was just a little bit different. I could tell through my father's voice and conversation that he really trusted Jay. Jay was a man of integrity. He was a family man, genuine, would give you the shirt off of his back. And I didn't hear my father talk about everybody in the industry that way. So when my dad offered the opportunity to go meet with Jay one-on-one, I absolutely took it. And here I am, a 23-year-old man who had long hair at the time. I had just backpacked through Europe. And I go and meet with Jay, who's a very established developer and broker in commercial real estate. And Jay's conversation was transformative. Now, Jay did not hire me. Why would he? I had no experience. I had no credentials in commercial real estate. But what Jay did say is to go buy a ticket to the ICSC show, the International Council of Shopping Centers. I had never been to the ICSC. In fact, I'd never even heard of the ICSC. At the time, I remember the ticket being a couple $100. A lot of money for somebody who's still working in the restaurants on the side. But when Jay spoke, I listened. So I purchased a ticket and I went to the expo. A few weeks later, I get to the ICSC expo and I'm a nobody. I put on my best suit and I printed out a bunch of resumes, but I was the only one there looking for a job. The conversations were a little awkward at first. I was very nervous. I walk into the expo and there's booths everywhere of some of the biggest brokers, bankers, developers in our area. And here I am, a nobody, passing out resumes, asking for business cards. The conversations went a little bit like this. Hi, I'm David Newman. They would introduce themselves. And they would say, who are you with, David? I say, well, actually, I was wondering if you're hiring any entry-level positions. Ironically, most of them had no idea. They said, I've been coming to this expo for a number of years, and no one's ever asked me that question. But here's what I can do for you, David. They would give me one of their business cards, and they would say, why don't you email me your resume and follow up with me after the show? I was excited. I went in with nothing. I came out with 30 or 40 brand new contacts with people that I could follow up with. So the next week, promptly, I followed up with every single business card that I had gathered at the expo, and that led to 4 possible interviews. The first 2 maybe didn't go so well. I was probably a little bit nervous, and it actually turns out that they had already hired some entry-level positions. They actually said my resume looked good, but they just didn't have any openings at the time. The next 2 offered me the job. I decided to go with the silver companies, and the rest was history. The lesson here is that one single conversation with Jay changed my entire life. A $250 ticket to the ICSC Expo and 1 day at the conference. My question to you is, how many of you can point to a single conversation that has changed the trajectory of your entire life? That conversation's coming if it hasn't already. Are you gonna stop and listen? So now I've made it, right? I'm hired. I'm working for the silver companies, a prominent developer with decades of experience and trust. The problem is, I didn't know what I was doing. They handed me essentially a bunch of site plans with all their developments and some books with some retailers that were looking to come to our region. This was at the very, very early internet stages, so things weren't quite as simple to research as they are now. I was terrified. I had no idea what to say when I called these people. I didn't know what I was doing. I can remember one of the guys that was sitting next to me at a shared desk was essentially saying, why did they hire you? I just got here and now they hired you as well. It wasn't a good start, but I continued to persevere. Day after day, I promised myself I was going to keep trying and trying and trying until I got better. And sure enough, my magic moment came. It was a deal I'll never forget because it was my first. It was a small 1,500 square foot lease in a shopping center. It was a concept called Party Makers. The concept was out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and it was owned by a mom and pop. And they wanted to open up one of the Party Makers stores as a franchise for their son in Virginia. Great, here I am, somebody who wants to move forward with a lease in the shopping center. The problem was, I didn't know the difference between a full service lease and a triple net lease. I didn't know how to write a letter of intent, but fortunately, I'd surrounded myself with people who did. In the early days at Silver Companies, I can remember just continuing to show up. I would come to conference calls early. I would sit in on other conversations with my boss when he would allow me, when he was talking with engineers and attorneys and architects and all sorts of other tenants that wanted to be into our projects. So I got to learn day by day, and that's what I would encourage anybody who's young in this career, is to just continue to show up, try to be a sponge, treat every day as a learning opportunity to make yourself stronger and stronger and get better at your craft. And don't just do the assigned work. Go above and beyond. Try to think strategically. Try to think ahead of some of the problems. Think ahead of some of the solutions. Think about questions, things that aren't making sense, and ask them to the right people. Treat every day as a platform and an opportunity to learn. Over the next few years with the Silver Companies, the deals continued to get bigger and bigger. I started to understand the difference between a triple net lease and a full service lease. I started to understand the differences of what a retail tenant needs versus what an office tenant needs, and the deals I started to work on became more and more transformative. One day, my boss comes to me and he says, "David, we've recently partnered on an 85-acre piece of property along Interstate I-95. There's over 150,000 cars per day. Our company's never really overseen a large corporate campus like this. We've overseen a lot of other large projects, but nothing specific to Class A office. Are you interested?" Absolutely. Some of the other brokers in the office were a bit reluctant. They wanted to stick to retail, and that makes sense. It's what they knew. Somebody has to figure this out. Why not that person be me? Over the next 10 years, I spent every waking moment working on the Quantico Corporate Center during the day. This part is important because what I was learning at Georgetown University's real estate program at night, I was able to apply the very next day at the project I was working on. And I was competing with folks that had 10, 20, 30, or 40 more years experience than I did when it came to brokerage and development. But that piece of education gave me an edge. They were working from older playbooks. And while some of those older playbooks things are timeless, there's some new things I was learning that gave me the edge. I remember some very, very long days working on the Quantico Corporate Center office project during the day, going to grad school at night, very little sleep, up late and early, but it was all worth it. The experience and the feeling that you have to see a project go from essentially its infancy at a plan to full fruition with a completed building that's a living, thriving space where people are working, and not just a space, but an incredible office space, working with some of the best architects, the best engineers, the best construction companies in the market. It was a fantastic journey, and I learned so much. When that office project was complete, I got to do something pretty special. I got to buy a one-way ticket to New Zealand. If I can give you a little pro tip on traveling, don't buy a one-way ticket to New Zealand. They won't even let you on the plane. I learned that the hard way. I did eventually make it to New Zealand, and I took a number of months off. I got to travel and go to all these countries that I'd always dreamed of going to. New Zealand, Australia, Thailand. I got to learn at an ashram in India and teach kids in Sri Lanka basketball and English. It was fantastic. The point of that is I would have never been able to do that in a corporate office job. It was commercial real estate that gave me those opportunities. When I returned back from travels, I was refreshed. I was rejuvenated. Just like in my earlier days when I backpacked with some friends through Europe. And what came next was pretty exciting. My still then boss came to me and said, "There's an opportunity to work on a baseball stadium, a minor league baseball stadium for the Nationals." Now, many times before this, the silver companies had tried to get minor league baseball stadium into the city of Fredericksburg, and it didn't work out for multiple reasons. So I was already going in with 3 failure projects before me. However, with a fresh mindset, with my experience from the Quantico office park and my degree from Georgetown University, I felt no time was better than now. Why this project mattered is because the city of Fredericksburg really wanted to have a stadium. It was part of their long-term plan. The issue was they could not raise taxes. They already had so many needs as a city. Teachers needed raises, new schools needed to be built, public service providers such as police officers and firefighters, they all needed new supplies, they all needed raises. So the challenge is, how do you build a $30 million stadium without raising taxes? This was the solution. Baseball stadium was going to be built on private land. Therefore, the city of Fredericksburg could recoup a significant portion of their investment through the real estate taxes alone. Additionally, when you go to a baseball game, think about what else you purchased: the ticket, a hot dog, some drinks, maybe some memorabilia. The point is, all of that stuff has taxes. So when you add the real estate taxes plus the taxes that were going to be generated from the stadium, we were pretty close to meeting the financial obligations that the city of Fredericksburg was going to be obligated to, but we were still just a little bit short. It was then that my boss had a brilliant idea. You see, the stadium was part of Central Park, one of the largest retail power centers on the East Coast at the time. And that property was in a property owners association, an association that collected fees annually from every paying tenant in the property. Retailers, hotels, grocery stores, you name it, they all contributed to this association. And the association was flush with cash. So the idea was to mend that small little gap of what was needed. We went to the Property Owners Association with the value proposition. If they could contribute a portion of their budget to the baseball stadium project, we would be able to, in theory, get the green light to proceed. It was a unanimous decision. We got the votes we needed, and the baseball stadium was able to be built. And to me, that's real estate at its best. When you're able to bring together various stakeholders with different intentions and different motivations, but be able to do something for the greater good of the community. I still get excited when I think about all of the baseball games that we've played there, the families, the boys, the girls that get to see maybe their first pitch ever at a baseball game. And this will go on for years and years to come. In addition to baseball, the city gets a stadium where they can host concerts and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and all sorts of other public events. And that is the best part of our profession, is enriching our community. Fortunately, with financing in place, the stadium was able to finish. But with COVID in place, those were very different times. The stadium was built, Quantico Corporate Center had been built out. Now what? After the baseball stadium was complete, before COVID-19 luckily, I realized something. I had been in Northern Virginia for my entire career, roughly 15 years. I knew the market in and out, and it was incredible. I got to work with so many wonderful people along the way, but I was starting to feel a bit stagnant. My sisters had both moved to Charleston, South Carolina. It was a place that I always loved to visit, but I didn't really know much about. My wife and I decided to spend a year in Hawaii. After Hawaii, it was a no-brainer for us to move to Charleston. It had the beaches, it had a family atmosphere, and we're so happy with that decision. But here was the catch. I had to start all over again. Well, yes, I knew real estate inside and out. I understood triple net leases. I understood full service leases. I understood development. I knew it all, but yet I was entering a new market where I knew nothing and I knew nobody and I didn't even know the market. So what did I have to do? Once again, I had to become a student. Over the next couple of years, I would try to do everything that led to success in Virginia and apply it in South Carolina. So I would meet with anybody that would have coffee with me, an engineer, an architect, a broker. I wanted to learn the insides and outs of the Charleston market. I wanted to learn what things were leasing for, what things were selling for, all the nuances of development, the things that have made me so successful in Virginia. When I first got to Charleston, I didn't even know the difference between James Island and Johns Island. I didn't know the difference between North Charleston and downtown Charleston. I was brand new. I had only been here as a guest just a few times. Within a few short years, along with a colleague, I was able to help relocate a boat dealer from West Ashley into downtown Charleston. They were able to purchase their first investment property. Additionally, I got to work with a Brazilian family that had owned a piece of property in the northern part of Charleston, but they wanted a facility to showcase their granite and stone and marble in downtown, a central location for everyone to see. I was able to work on transactions in the building where my wife and I got married. And more recently, I was able to work with Soccer 5, a small-sided soccer concept that is now going to be headquartered here in Charleston, South Carolina. And that's the power of commercial real estate. You can use everything that you've learned in your prior career and apply it to be successful even in a brand new market. A couple of years ago, my little sister Sarah at eXp Realty approached me about going to the eXp conference in Miami. I was a bit reluctant at first, admittedly, but then again, she was doing things that I hadn't seen before. She had a YouTube channel with thousands of followers and hundreds of videos with content. She became a top 3% agent in Charleston in just her third year in the business. It was phenomenal. I was intrigued, so I decided to go to the conference. And there I was blown away. You see, my little sister Sarah understood the power of social media, and using the eXp global platform was able to propel her career to levels previously unseen by a third-year agent. I was equally humbled as I was intrigued, and once again, I was required to make an important decision. But to me this time it was a no-brainer. I chose eXp Commercial last year, and this will be my home for the foreseeable future. When I think about eXp, I think about a very powerful global cloud-based platform. I think about the difference between how people stream videos now with Netflix versus what they did before Netflix, which was go to a video store. In the old model, you had rent, you had overhead, you had a lot of expenses. With streaming, there's no bricks and mortar. There's way less overhead. And by doing that, the profit margins are higher. Therefore, they can distribute a higher percentage back to their agents. With somebody with nearly 20 years of experience, that had my attention. Additionally, eXp allows you to grow even by just being an agent, by attracting other agents into the business. Their success becomes your success. After joining eXp Commercial earlier this year, something unexpected happened last month. I actually made one of the top 10 agents for all eXp Commercial for the entire country. That was not expected. If you're curious to learn more about eXp Commercial, I'm going to have a short video just after this one that you can watch next. When I was at eXpCon in Miami, they had a phrase that said, eXp, it's where the pros go to grow. I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks again.